Hello and welcome. My name is Brittany Bryan. I'm the creator of Driftwood Wellness Studio, and I just wanted to take a minute to show face and say hi and talk a little bit about the brand as well as this introductory lecture series, because I won't really be on camera after this. You'll just be looking at and listening to a PowerPoint. So hello. Driftwood Wellness Studio, or DWS, is, as of right now, a pretty small team of women who are committed to helping people live healthier, more fulfilling lives, and we do that through offering a range of services, including yoga, sound baths, health coaching, including mental health coaching, and then small-scale interior design services. So that's one component. We offer those services on a one-to-one and small group basis. But then the other component of the brand that I had been thinking about, and that was important to me, is building out this library of wellness-related content. And so this series in Ayurveda is the first part of my starting to build that out. I had been thinking about the brand for the past 2 years, and even though it had solidified, in my mind about a year ago, things had taken kind of a backseat. My husband and I we'd been out of state for 6 years, and we moved home, and then we're immediately pregnant with our first child, who we are expecting any day now. And then we both got new jobs, and so, things have been a little bit slow in developing. But then, of course, right now, before our entire lives change, I find myself with some time to start pushing some content into the world. So I anticipate it continuing to be a slow-moving thing, especially this library, of content. But I'm hoping to publish things at least on a quarterly basis, which was my original intention, even if it's just, a blog post or like a new tea blend or a new soap. I think I can at least manage that. So welcome to this journey. Welcome to Ayurveda 101. So this is a 4-part series, and I have run it in person several times, and I love running it in person. So if you're, or in real time, so if you're interested in booking, a live version, email us. I'll include the contact information below. And you'll get some more resources, and we'll get to have a conversation, and you can do it for, all the segments if you're interested, or just one of 4. So there's this introductory, introduction to Ayurvedic principles and philosophy. And then there's one part dedicated to each of the doshas, Vata, Pitta, and Kapha. So this first one the content is based on this introductory text. I don't know if this is going to show up mirrored or not. I don't know how cameras work. Anyways, this Ayurveda, The Science of Self-Healing by Dr. Vasant Lad is my primary resource for this first installment, and I highly recommend it. He is the leading practitioner, scholar, educator in the U.S. For Ayurveda, and the subsequent installments are based on this crunchier work, Ayurvedic perspectives on selected pathologies, also by Vasant Lad. So that's that, and I don't think there was anything else I wanted to mention. Welcome to Ayurveda 101. I hope you enjoy it. Reach out with any questions that you have, and thanks for being here.
Hello and welcome to Ayurveda 101. This is part 1 of a 4-part series, this section being an overview of Ayurvedic principles and philosophy. And before we get started today, I would like to start with a quick grounding exercise. I'd like to invite you to take a slow breath in through your nose and let it out through your mouth. Bring your attention to the top of your head, noticing any sensation there, any warmth, coolness, or pressure, or nothing at all. And allow it to be just as it is, just observing. Let your awareness drift down to your face and your jaw. If you notice any tightness, imagine it softening. Move your attention to your shoulders and chest. Feel the rise and fall of your breath, steady and supportive. Notice your hands resting wherever they are. Feel their weight, their temperature, their connection to the air or the surface beneath them. Bring your awareness to your legs and your feet. Sense how they are supported by the ground, held without effort. And take one more slow breath and gently remind yourself, in this moment I am here, present, safe, and ready to learn. Let's begin. Starting out with a disclaimer, which I am simply going to read out loud to make sure all of my bases are covered. So it is not my intention to offer medical advice, nor should you delay or neglect seeking medical attention due to any information received in this workshop. Rather, it is my intention to provide an overview of an ancient body of knowledge that extends an invitation to attendees to increase their awareness and knowledge of themselves and to pursue healthy lifestyle choices. And just so you know what to expect from today's lecture, we're going to be first defining Ayurveda. So we'll look at some of its etymological, literal, historical, and cultural roots. And then we're going to talk briefly about some of the differences in Eastern and Western medicine and ways of thinking, and how that might affect how we as Westerners perceive and learn about Ayurveda. We're going to learn about the predominant theory of the universe that Ayurveda is based on. And then we'll learn about the 5 elements recognized by Ayurveda before moving on to talk about the doshas, which are the 3 distinct bodily humors that are unique to Ayurveda. And they're probably the thing you're most familiar with if you have some foundational knowledge already. So then we'll pause to take a brief self-assessment to find out what your unique doshic makeup is, lots of fun. And then we'll wrap up by talking about the disease process and disease proneness. So if that sounds like a good time, let's get going. And then I just want to say before I really launch into the content that if I sound out of breath, I've had a head cold and I'm 9 months pregnant, and I just really I'm going to do my best to get through it, but I might have to stop and take some deep breaths now and then myself. So we're going to start out by touching briefly on the roots of Ayurveda. So at its core, we're talking about an ancient holistic system of medicine that is indigenous to and still widely practiced on a daily basis in India. So that's the short definition. The word Ayurveda is composed of 2 Sanskrit terms, Ayu, which means life or daily living, and then Veda, which means knowing or knowledge, and it translates as a whole to the science of daily living. So Ayurveda was first recorded in the ancient literature of the Vedas, which are ancient Hindu religious texts. If you weren't aware, Hinduism is recognized as the oldest religion that is still in practice today. And its foundational sacred texts, the Vedas, and there are 4 of them, are among the oldest religious texts in the world. So they're estimated by scholars to have been composed between 1500 and 900 BCE during the late Bronze Era and early Iron Age in northwestern India. So that's all to say that it's old. And I'm not going to delve too deeply here. I will just say that it was first passed down as an oral tradition before being recorded specifically in the Rig Veda and the Thurva Veda. So if you want to do further research on your own, and the other foundational formal texts known as Samhitas are the Karak Samhita and the Sushruta Samhita, which were developed around 600 BC. If you want to get really crunchy and seek out the original source material, that's where you're going to look. Otherwise, just know, we know it's as old as our system of writing, which is thousands of years old, and that it was passed down as an oral tradition before then. So it's a well-esteemed, well-established tradition that we're going to be talking about today. So for thousands of years and continuing today, Ayurveda helps the healthy person to maintain their health and the diseased person to regain health. It has been referred to as a metaphysical healing life science, quote, the mother of all healing arts. And then again, at its core, I just want to underscore it's a holistic practice. So this is a lifestyle designed to promote human happiness, health, and creative growth. Nowadays, in the post-COVID world, our definition of wellness has expanded, and popular models or definitions, including that by the World Health Organization, recognize health and wellness as multidimensional states of being. In the West, wellness used to be focused solely through the lens of being physically well, but now the popular view is coming around to acknowledge wellness is also pertaining to mental health, spiritual health, communal, even financial, occupational health, and more. So this is not a new concept. It is in America, but if you look to these ancient practices, one of the foundational tenets of Ayurveda will tell you that health is defined not just as your physical well-being, but as the capability of the individual to pursue happiness and creative expression. So I'm not just functioning, I'm thriving, and I'm able to focus on the things in my life that bring me joy and meaning. And then the last foundational principle I want to touch on is that Ayurveda is for the people. It's meant to be approachable and empowering. Yes, it is also a sophisticated system of medicine, including surgery. But remember, this is the science of daily living. Ideally, we don't need surgery or invasive interventions, not on a regular basis. So the lifestyle practices of Ayurveda, while they may be unfamiliar or seem outlandish at first, they are simple and practical, and they can be acquired by anyone. Ayurveda recognizes the tremendous capability for the individual for self-healing, and it teaches us that through the proper balance of all energies in the body, the processes of physical deterioration and disease can be reduced. And I want to touch on some of the differences between Ayurveda and Western medicine that I think are important to bear in mind when approaching the subject, especially if it's one that's brand new to you, and if you haven't studied other Eastern systems of medicine like traditional Chinese medicine. I just want to help you to anticipate some of what might seem strange to you at first. So Western thinking tends to generalize and to categorize individuality, meaning to sort individuals into the boxes that they fit best in. So for instance, according to the Western concept of normality, what is common in the majority of people is what constitutes the norm. Whereas Ayurveda holds that normality must be evaluated individually because every human constitution manifests as its own, quote, particular and spontaneous temperament and functioning. So everyone is unique, everyone is different. In the East, the key to understanding is acceptance, observation, and experience. In the West, it is questioning, analysis, and logical deduction. The Western mind generally trusts objectivity, while the Eastern gives more emphasis to subjectivity. And these differences in approach might cause some people some difficulty in their initial comprehension of Ayurveda. And then many of the things we're going to cover in today's lecture might elicit questions of how or why that might not always be obvious or answerable. And I think it's important to note that even in modern Western medicine, some concepts are proven to work without us knowing the reasons behind them. But also Ayurveda is a holistic science, as we've said, and the sum of many elements comprises its truth. So as you move along in learning and experiencing Ayurveda, just know that the statements that at first glance appeared confusing or outlandish will become easier to comprehend. So we've talked about Ayurveda being a holistic practice. It's also important to recognize that historically, Ayurveda did not function just as a science, but as part of a religious and philosophical framework as well. It was viewed as the foundation of a sort of trifecta alongside yoga and tantra. So Ayurveda is the system of tending to your physical body before moving on to greater spiritual awareness and development. I used to have a longer section on Ayurveda, yoga, and tantra here that seemed to meander a little bit, so I've condensed it. But I do want to emphasize that these three practices were viewed in ancient India as interdependent. Ayurveda is the science of daily living, helping us not only to exist but to flourish here on planet Earth. Yoga, the Hindu practice that you were probably the most familiar with, even if you didn't know it was Hindu, is derived from the Sanskrit word for yoke, meaning union, and it referred to union with the divine. So the earliest texts that we have on yoga don't even list a single physical posture or asana. Yoga is at its core a spiritual practice focusing on elevating your consciousness and communing with the divine. That's its simplest definition. And then Tantra, which is very misunderstood, or just not understood at all in the West, is the most direct method of controlling our vital energy that enables us to create this union with the divine to elevate our consciousness. So some of the principles and practices we go on to talk about may be familiar to you if you've studied yoga and or tantra, and if you haven't, that's okay. I will say that here in this course, we're focused on Ayurveda, and while there is an overlap with some practices, I'm not going to call it specifically yoga or tantra after this point. And Vasant Lad makes the point in his book that the purpose of yoga and tantric practice is liberation, but that liberation is only achieved through rigorous discipline and practice. But Ayurveda, again, is approachable, can be practiced successfully by anyone for the achievement of good health and longevity. So that's what we're focused on here. But let's talk about what exactly that spiritual philosophy looked like, historically speaking, that informed the creation of Ayurveda as a practice. So all Ayurvedic literature is based on something called the Samkhya philosophy of creation. And if you Google that word, you will see two slightly different spellings, one with an in and one with an im, as well as two different etymological explanations. So the definition in Vasant Lad's book posits that Samkhya derives from two Sanskrit words, sat meaning truth and kya meaning to know or right knowledge. And the other etymology defines it as a noun meaning number or calculation. And both have merit, and you'll see why in just a second. Samkhya is one of the oldest orthodox Hindu philosophies, and it is the first system of defining or understanding the universe within Hinduism that doesn't rely upon a deity. So it's considered atheistic. Before this model existed, the Hindu theory of creation always relied upon a creator god or gods. But this system of understanding the world is actually considered more scientific in nature. The philosophy is attributed to the sage known as Kapila. In ancient India, sages were called rishis, and they were mystics who discovered the truth of creation and existence through rigorous spiritual practices and discipline, a lot of meditation. So the Rishi Kapila, several thousands of years ago, the exact time he lived is slightly debated, and we won't get into the weeds there today, but he defined this Samkhya philosophy of creation and organized the known universe into 25 fundamental elements or tattvas. And this is where we start to count and to look at this big, beautiful chart. So 1, we have pure consciousness, or Purusha, up on the left-hand side. This is referred to as being male energy, even though we aren't talking deities here, remember. It is formless, odorless, colorless, beyond attributes. It takes no active part in the manifestation of the universe. This is energy that is choiceless, passive awareness, unmanifested, beyond cause and effect, space and time. So this is pure existence. And then over on the right, we have matter or nature, Prakruti. This is referred to as female creative energy that has form, color, and attributes. It is awareness with the choice, divine will, the one who desires to become many. The universe is said to be the child born out of the womb of Prakruti, the divine mother, and she creates everything in the universe while Purusha bears witness to this creation. 3, cosmic intelligence, Buddhi or Mahad. So the first manifestation or creation of Prakruti was this cosmic intellect. 4, ego, Amkara, from this intellect, the ego, which is the individual ego, the individual mind and consciousness, is formed. And then on this chart, we have the gunas. We don't actually count them, but it's helpful to have them to see them where they are in this chart, and that's sattva, rajas, and tamas. These are the 3 attributes that are the foundation of all existence on earth. They are contained in balance in Prakriti. Sattva is essence, stability, pure aspect, awakening and light. Rajas is dynamic movement. Tamas is inertia, static potential energy, darkness, ignorance, and matter. So they exist in Prakriti, and they help to create the organic and the inorganic universes below. So 5 through 15, we have 5 sensory organs, 5 action organs, as well as the mind, our mental organ. So these were created by the ego with the help of sattva, or essence. So it manifests into 11 organs that we need to perceive and navigate the world around us, thereby creating the organic universe: hearing, feeling, seeing, tasting, smelling, speech, grasping, walking, procreation, elimination, and the mind, which is our faculty of cognition and action. And then 16 through 25, we have 5 subtle elements and 5 gross elements. So the ego further manifests into these elements with the help of tamas to create sound, touch, form, taste, and smell, ether, air, fire, water, and earth. These elements constitute the inorganic universe, which just means inorganic, just means that it is not conscious or sentient. So far, we've defined Ayurveda, the science of daily living, as a holistic lifestyle practice dating back thousands of years to ancient India. We've talked about some of the differences between Eastern and Western schools of philosophy as they pertain to medicine and how they might influence any sort of learning curve a Westerner might encounter. We've contextualized Ayurveda as it relates to yoga and tantra, and we've talked about Samkhya, the theory of the universe that had arisen in India and that influenced Hinduism and therefore Ayurveda at the time. So from here, we're going to move on to discuss the 3 doshas, the physiological types recognized by Ayurveda, which is the most interesting part of Ayurveda to many people because you'll get to see how all of this pertains to you on a personal level, and you'll get to learn some new things about yourself, hopefully. But one last thing before we get there: the bridge between Samkhya philosophy and the doshas, at least in this class, are the 5 elements. So remember that at the bottom of that chart that we just looked at, we had 5 basic elements manifested by Prakriti, matter or nature, in the inorganic universe. And inorganic, again, just means unconscious, not sentient. Ether or space, air, fire, water, and earth. So this concept of the 5 elements is central to Ayurvedic science and cosmology. Those sages, the rishis we talked about, perceived that in the beginning, the world existed in an unmanifested state of consciousness. From that state of unified consciousness, the subtle vibrations of the cosmic soundless sound Om manifested. And from that vibration, there first appeared the ether element. This ethereal element then began to undulate, and its subtle movements created air, which is ether in action. The movement of ether also produced friction, and through that friction, heat was generated. Particles of heat energy combined to form intense light, and from this light, the fire element manifested. Through the heat of fire, certain ethereal elements dissolved and liquefied, manifesting the water element, and then solidified to form the molecules of earth. So in this way, ether manifested into the 4 additional elements of air, fire, water, and earth. So these 5 basic elements exist in all matter. Water provides the classic example. The solid state of water, which is ice, is a manifestation of the earth principle. Latent heat, or fire, in the ice liquefies it, manifesting the water principle, and eventually it turns into steam, expressing the air principle. The steam eventually dissipates into ether or space. Likewise, the 5 elements can all be found within the human body. So we're full of empty spaces, which are manifestations of the ether element. For example, there are spaces in our mouths, noses, sinuses, GI tracts, respiratory tracts, abdomens, etc. Air manifests in the larger movements of our muscles, the pulsations of our heart, the expansion and contraction of our lungs, and the movements of the stomach wall and intestines. The entire movements of the central nervous system are governed by bodily air. And even if we're to look at ourselves under a microscope, they seem like they're moving. In the body, the source of fire is metabolism. Fire works in our digestive systems and in the gray matter of our brain cells. It also manifests as intelligence and activates the retina, which perceives light. So body temperature, digestion, the thinking processes, and visions are all functions of bodily fire. And then all metabolic and enzyme systems are controlled by that element as well. Water manifests in the secretions of our digestive fluids, in our mucous membranes, and in plasma and cytoplasm. Water is vital for the functioning of our tissues, organs, and various bodily systems, which is why dehydration, a great loss of our bodily water, has to be treated so quickly to protect the patient's life. And because this element is so vital, bodily water is also called the water of life. And then lastly, life is possible on planet Earth because Earth holds all living and non-living substances to its solid surface. And in the body, those solid structures are our bones, cartilage, nails, muscles, tendons, skin, and hair. All of these are manifestations of Earth. So just as the elements manifest within our bodies, each is also associated with a specific sense. And we won't go in depth here, but I'll summarize that ether is associated with sound, air with touch, fire with vision, water with our sense of taste, and earth with smell. And that brings us to the doshas, the human constitution. So according to Ayurveda, the first requirement for healing oneself and others is a clear understanding of the three doshas, referred to collectively as the tridosha. Ether, air, fire, water, and earth combine within our bodies and manifest as these three basic principles or humors. Air and ether form vata dosha, fire and water combine to form pitta, and earth and water create kapha. These three elements, or doshas, govern all biological functions of the body, acting as both basic constituents and protective barriers. And when they are out of balance, they contribute to the disease process. The tridosha are responsible for the arising of natural urges and for individual preferences in foods, their flavors, their temperatures, their level of spiciness, etc. They govern the creation, maintenance, and destruction of bodily tissues, as well as the elimination of waste products from the body. They are responsible for psychological phenomena, including emotions such as fear, anger, and greed, as well as for the highest order of human emotions, such as understanding, compassion, and love. So when we refer to an individual's constitution, we're talking about the degree to which each dosha manifests within your body, how much pitta you have versus how much kapha. And it's important to note that our bodies contain every dosha to varying degrees, but your particular makeup is determined at conception, at the precise moment of the fertilization of the ovum, and it's determined by the doshas of your parents, so it's genetic. And since it's genetically determined, your basic constitution will remain unaltered during your lifetime. That original combination of elements present at conception remains constant. But there's a fluidity to this, and that's because our external environments are constantly changing, and our doshas respond to these changes. And then adjustments need to be made by us in order to maintain that original balance. So this goes back to something that was briefly touched upon at the beginning of the lecture, which is the importance of maintaining a balance of energies within our bodies in order to protect our health. So throughout your life, throughout each season, and even throughout an individual day, there's a constant interaction between our internal and our external environments, and these interactions directly affect the doshas. The sun sets, it gets colder. Coldness elevates the vata dosha. That's just one example. And we'll go over many more in subsequent lectures. What's important to note now is that from an Ayurvedic perspective, we have the ability to maintain balance within our bodies by altering our diet and other lifestyle choices to counteract those changes in our external environments that act upon our doshas. So a return to balance is always possible. And then before we move on to summarize some of the qualities of each of these doshas, I want to note here that this concept of the tridosha of vata, pitta, kapha is unique to Ayurveda. You won't find it anywhere else. So as we move along through these descriptions, just bear in mind that they reflect their pure aspects. So these summaries would describe like 100% vata person or 100% pitta person. But remember that no one is solely comprised of one dosha. You contain a combination of all three. So even if you have one dominant dosha, which we'll find out shortly, not everything we go over with vata will ring true for you necessarily, but a lot of it will feel familiar or accurate. So Vata is comprised of air and ether, or space, but it is referred to in Ayurveda as the air principle, the principle of movement. So note that each dosha is associated with two elements, but one will be considered the dominant element. So in this case, it's air. And it's not the same as atmospheric air, however, it is bodily air, which is defined as the subtle energy that governs biological movement. Therefore, Vata governs breathing, blinking of the eyelids, movements in muscles and tissues, pulsations in the heart, all expansion and contraction, the movements of cytoplasm and cell membranes, and the movement of the single impulses in nerve cells. Those are its physical affiliations. Each dosha also governs specific emotions. In the case of Vata, it governs nervousness, fear, and anxiety. And then each dosha has a primary seat or home within the body, and that primary home is located within our digestive system. So Vata's primary home is our large intestine. And we'll circle back around to this later on, but you should know two things now. One, according to Ayurveda, a disease process can begin in the body or it can begin within the mind. And two, disease processes that start within the body all begin with digestive imbalances. To be continued, just know that digestion is super important, and we're going to talk a lot about it. But back to Vata. So the large intestine is the primary seat, the home of Vata, and then there are secondary places within your body that if Vata becomes imbalanced, and when we say imbalanced, we mean there is an excess of Vata, it will begin to accumulate in those secondary sites. And for Vata, the secondary sites are the pelvic cavity, head, bones, skin, and ears. Vata individuals tend to have underdeveloped or narrow, flat chests with veins and tendons easily visible beneath their skin. The complexion can be dark or tan. The skin tends to be dry or rough and cracked. Typically, they have a few moles, which tend to be dark. They can be very tall or very short with thin, wiry frames and prominent joints, scant muscle development. This is why I lead with the disclaimer on the previous page. When we're looking at the pure aspect of Vata in particular, it can sound really offensive, or just like we're describing like cartoon villains. The hair can be curly or scanty, the eyelashes thin or light, and the eyes lusterless. The eyes can also be sunken, small, dry, and or active, meaning darting from place to place. And the conjunctiva can be dry, that funny little place where, your eyes kind of turn down near the bridge of your nose. The nails can be rough or brittle, the shape of the nose bent and turned up. Physiologically, the appetite and digestion are variable, and Vata individuals crave, or if not crave, then are balanced by sweet, sour, and salty tastes, and they prefer hot beverages. Their production of urine is scanty, and the feces can be dry, hard, and small in quantity, so they tend towards constipation. They have a tendency to perspire less than the other two types. Their sleep can be disturbed and restless. They have less sleep than the other two. Their hands and feet are often cold. These people are creative, active, alert, and restless. They're very easy to spot. They talk fast and they walk fast, but are easily fatigued. Psychologically, they have quick mental understanding, but a short memory. They will understand something immediately, but soon forget it. They have little willpower, tend towards mental instability, and possess little tolerance, confidence, or boldness. Their reasoning power is weak, and they are nervous, fearful, and afflicted by much anxiety. So each constitutional type also exhibits certain patterns and interactions with the external environment. Vata people tend to earn money quickly, but they also tend to spend it quickly and can remain poor. So Pitta is fire and water, with its primary element being fire. Just like with Vata, this is not a literal translation, not like a flame of a candle that you can see, but bodily heat energy manifests as metabolism. So Pitta governs digestion, absorption, assimilation, nutrition, body temperature, skin coloration, the luster of the eyes, intelligence, and understanding. Psychologically, Pitta arouses hate, anger, and jealousy. The small intestine is the primary seat of Pitta, and the brain, liver, gallbladder, spleen, blood, eyes, and skin are its secondary seat. So you might notice as we go through these that there's some overlap in the secondary seats. The skin, for example, is listed for both Vata and Pitta, but depending on which dosha is out of balance, that location will be affected differently. So with an excess of Vata, the skin can become dry and cracked, and with an excess of Pitta, we might develop hives, rashes, or eczema, inflammation. So again, we'll get into more detail in the dosha-specific lectures on that. Pitta individuals are of medium height. They're slender. They can be slender, and their body frame may be delicate or average. Their chests are not as flat as Vata, and they may show a medium prominence of veins and tendons. They may have many moles and freckles that can be bluish or brownish red. Muscle development is moderate. The Pitta complexion may be coppery, yellowish, reddish, or fair. The skin is soft, warm, and less wrinkled than Vata. The hair is thin, silky, red or brownish with a tendency towards premature graying or hair loss. The eyes can be gray, green, or copper brown and sharp. The eyes will be of medium prominence, and the conjunctiva moist and copper colored. The nails are soft. The shape of the nose is sharp, and the tip may be reddish. So thinking of very sharp features or sharp angles, a sharp chin, a sharp nose is a sign of a Pitta person. Physiologically, Pitta people tend to have strong metabolism, good digestion, and a resulting strong appetite. So they can take in larger quantities of food and liquid, and they have cravings for sweet, bitter, and astringent foods, or at least are balanced by those, and they prefer cold drinks. Their sleep is of medium duration but uninterrupted. They produce a large volume of urine, and the feces are yellowish, liquid, soft, and plentiful. There is a tendency towards excessive perspiration and smelly perspiration. The body temperature may run slightly high, and the hands and feet tend to be warm. Pitta people do not tolerate sunlight or heat very well. Psychologically, they have good power of comprehension, and they tend to be intelligent, sharp, good orators, natural leaders. They have emotional tendencies toward hate, anger, and jealousy. They are ambitious and generally like to lead. And they appreciate material prosperity and tend to be moderately well off. And they enjoy exhibiting their wealth and luxurious possessions. And then finally we have Kapha, which is comprised of water and earth, but translates as bodily water. Kapha is also the word for the frothy digestive fluid that begins the breakdown of our food initially. So our bodily water cements the elements within our bodies, providing the material for solid physical structure. Bodily water is responsible for biological strength and natural tissue resistance in the body. Kapha lubricates the joints, provides moisture to the skin, and helps heal wounds. It fills spaces in the body, gives strength, vigor, and stability, supports memory retention, gives energy to the heart and lungs, and maintains immunity. Kapha is present in the chest, throat, head, sinuses, nose, mouth, stomach, joints, cytoplasms, plasma, and liquid secretions of the body, such as mucus. Psychologically, Kapha is responsible for the emotions of attachment, greed, and long-standing envy. And it is also expressed in tendencies towards calmness, forgiveness, and love. And Kapha actually has two primary seats, which is the stomach and the lungs. And its secondary seats are the brain, sinuses, nose, tongue, and joints. People of Kapha constitution have well-developed bodies. There's a tendency to carry excess weight. Their chests are expanded and broad. The veins and tendons are not obvious due to thick skin and good muscle development. The bones are not prominent. Their complexions are fair and bright. Skin is soft, lustrous, and oily. It's also cold and pale. Their hair is thick, dark, soft, and wavy. The eyes are large and darker blue, with the white of the eye generally very white, large, and attractive. The conjunctiva does not tend towards redness. Physiologically, they have regular appetites, but digestion can be relatively slow, so there's less intake of food. They tend to move slowly as well. They crave or are balanced by pungent, bitter, and astringent foods. Stools are soft and may be pale in color, and evacuation is slow. They tend to move slowly, and their perspiration is moderate. Sleep is sound and prolonged, so they actually have to sleep the least of the doshas because they sleep so soundly. There's a strong vital capacity evidenced by good stamina, and kapha people are generally healthy, happy, and peaceful. Psychologically, they tend towards tolerance and calmness, forgiveness, and loving. They can also exhibit greed, attachment, envy, and possessiveness. Their comprehension is slow but definite, unlike vata, which comprehension is immediate, but they forget things. Kapha, once they might take a minute longer to understand something or to grasp something, but then once they have it, they'll remember it. Kapha people tend to be wealthy, and they are good at earning money and holding on to it. So we're coming to the fun part now, where we will pause for you to take a self-assessment online if you're in a place where you're able to do so. I'd like to recommend Banyan Botanical's website, which is what I'll paste a link to in the description of this video. And I like them because they're a really rich resource. They have a lot of good content themselves, and they also sell really high quality Ayurvedic products, so they're a one-stop shop. But also, if you're just getting familiar with Ayurveda, it's nice because they offer 2 quizzes, and the first time you take it, you'll complete them both together. And the first one will tell you your constitution, and the second one will help you gauge if you're currently imbalanced. And you can return and take that quiz whenever you want. And Banyan will make recommendations then for specific products to help right the imbalance if there is one. And then eventually, once you become more familiar with Ayurvedic principles, you'll be able to gauge on your own what is imbalanced and how to address it. But it's a really nice tool to even help you to grow that awareness of your body in the first place. I don't receive kickbacks from them or anything. I've purchased some of their products in the past and personally recommend them. Some of them are more expensive, like the prepared products, like, honeys or what have you, or other food items, but the bulk herbs are actually a really good value. So anyways, and then just a note about taking the quiz. If you are uncertain of an answer, think back to a time when you felt like you were functioning at your best, most healthiest version of yourself. So you want to answer as the balanced version of you. So go ahead and pause the video if you're able and take the assessment, and then meet me back here. Welcome back. So the summaries of the doshas we just went over, it's just a glimpse of what's to come with the dosha-specific modules, where we'll go over even more qualities and traits. But for now, we're going to move into the last section of our introductory overview and talk a little bit about the disease process. So a balance among the tridosha is necessary for human health. Most notably, a balance must exist between these 3 to ensure our metabolic processes run smoothly. So pitta, or fire, is our metabolism. It is the process of converting food into energy via our catabolism, the breaking down processes of the body, which is vata, and our anabolism, how we synthesize, build up, and store energy, which is kapha. For example, when vata is out of balance, the metabolism will be disturbed, resulting in excess catabolism, which is the breakdown or deterioration process, leading to emaciation. When anabolism, kapha, is greater than catabolism, vata, there's an increased rate of growth and repair of the organs and tissues. And sometimes this is a natural occurrence. Remember that our overall constitutions will remain the same throughout our lifetime, but there are certain periods where specific doshas are meant to increase or decrease. So in childhood, anabolism and kapha elements are predominant since it's the greatest time of physical growth. In adulthood, metabolism and the element of pitta are most apparent because at this stage the body is matured and stable. And then in old age, catabolism and vata are the most evident as the body begins to deteriorate. But it's obvious to us when there's an unnatural imbalance. If I'm a kapha dominant person and I'm built pretty sturdy, and then all of a sudden I become emaciated in my prime, then there's an issue. So every dasha has its season, time of day, and stage of life that it governs, and we'll explore each of these further in the dosha lectures. But as we were talking about the doshas together on the whole, it's important to note that they function together to maintain our metabolism, first and foremost. Earlier on, we discussed how the internal environment of the body is constantly reacting to the external environment. Disorder occurs when these two environments are out of balance. And according to Ayurveda, health is order, disease is disorder. But a wise person learns to be aware of the presence of disorder in their body and can immediately set about reestablishing order. But to know how to restore proper balance, we first have to understand how the disease process occurs. So generally speaking, according to Ayurveda, health exists when these 5 conditions are met. The digestive fire, which is called Agni, is in balanced condition, and we'll talk about that more in a second. The bodily humors of Vata, Pitta, Kapha are in equilibrium. Our 3 major waste products, which is urine, feces, and sweat, are produced at normal levels and are in balance. When the senses are functioning normally, and the body, mind, and consciousness are harmoniously working as one. When the balance of any of these systems is disturbed, the disease process begins. Ayurveda teaches us that because these systems are responsible for natural immunity and resistance, even contagious diseases can't affect a person in good health, which is a theory that I've heard articulated in newer Western models of health. This idea that if your immune system is working properly, you won't get sick, which sounds stupid, simple, but it reflects this bigger tonal shift here in the West, where the focus of immunity isn't just on the eradication of bacteria through the use of antibiotics or what have you, but on the maintenance instead of our microbiomes or our natural physical barriers against illness. So again, we're just circling back around to knowledge that's actually thousands of years old that's been available to us. But coming back to imbalances of the body and mind are considered to be responsible for physical and psychological pain and misery. So let's learn how to balance ourselves. So earlier, I mentioned briefly that an imbalance can begin in the body or the mind. When it begins in the body, the imbalance starts in our digestive system and then spreads. That's the short explanation. And it can be caused by a myriad of environmental factors. Weather and temperature changes, certain foods, certain living habits, all have the ability to throw us off balance depending on how compatible they are with our specific doshas. You'll learn in subsequent lectures what factors to look out specifically depending on your constitution. The longer explanation is this. With body first imbalances, our digestion becomes compromised by the imbalance of the doshas, and toxins are created that circulate throughout our bodies and settle in weak places and then go on to manifest disease. So this happens because of something called Agni, our digestive fire, which is super important. So Agni is the biological fire that governs our metabolism. It is similar in function to Pitta and considered part of the Pitta system of the body. Pitta contains heat energy, and that heat energy is Agni. So they are essentially the same thing, but Pitta is the container and Agni is the content. Agni is acidic in nature, and in the stomach, its action breaks down food and it stimulates digestion. Agni is present, though, in every cell of our bodies and is necessary for maintaining the nutrition of the tissues and the maintenance of our immune systems. Agni destroys microorganisms, foreign bacteria, and toxins in the stomach, as well as the small and large intestines, and in this way it protects the flora of our digestive organs. Just like with fire, our longevity, intelligence, understanding, perception, and comprehension are all functions of Agni. Specifically, the color of the skin is maintained by Agni, and the enzyme system and metabolism are totally dependent upon Agni. So as long as Agni is functioning properly, the process of breaking down food and absorbing and assimilating it into the body will be operating smoothly. When Agni becomes impaired because of an imbalance in the Tridosha, the metabolism is drastically affected. The body's resistance and immune system are impaired. Food components remain undigested and unabsorbed, and it accumulates in the large intestine, turning into this heterogeneous, smelly, sticky substance, which is called ama, A-M-A. And it clogs the intestines and eventually our other channels, our blood vessels, and eventually undergoes a bunch of chemical changes that create toxins. These toxins are absorbed into the blood and enter general circulation. They eventually accumulate in the weaker parts of the body, again, where they can create contraction, clogging, stagnation, and weaknesses of the organs, reducing our immune mechanism and respective tissues. Finally, a disease condition manifests in the affected organs and is identified as arthritis, diabetes, heart disease, etc. Therefore, the root of all disease is ama, and there are many causes for its development. For example, when incompatible foods are ingested, agni will be directly affected. If the tongue is coated with a white film, this symptom indicates that ama exists in the large intestine, small intestine, or stomach, depending on which part of the tongue is coated. So you might have seen tongue scrapers being sold more in stores recently, and that's the reason. Scraping the tongue is believed to massage the internal organs where these toxins have accumulated and help loosen it. Ama develops when agni's function is reduced. However, overactive agni is likewise detrimental. So when agni becomes hyperactive, the digestive process burns away through overcombustion our normal nutrients in our food, and then emaciation results, which also lowers the body's immunity. And then these toxins, ama, are also created by emotional factors. So when an imbalance begins in the mind as opposed to the body, repressed emotions aggravate our dosha in their respective homes. So repressed anger, for example, will change the flora of the gallbladder, bile ducts, and small intestines and aggravates pitta, causing inflamed patches of mucous membranes on the stomach and small intestine. Similarly, fear and anxiety, our vata emotions, alter the flora of the large intestine, the seat of vata. As a result, our bellies can become bloated with gas, which accumulates in the pockets of the large intestine, causing pain. So because of the ill effects of repression, it is recommended that neither the emotions nor any bodily urge, such as coughing, sneezing, or passing gas, should be repressed. And Ayurveda recommends that emotions be observed with detachment and then allowed to dissipate. Because when emotions are repressed, that repression will cause disturbances in the mind that eventually affects the body. And then just a note on disease proneness. Individual constitution determines disease proneness. So, for example, people with kapha constitution have a tendency towards kapha diseases. They might experience chronic or frequent bouts of tonsillitis, bronchitis, sinusitis, and congestion in the lungs. Pitta has a tendency towards gallbladder, bile and liver disorders, hyperacidity, peptic ulcers, gastritis, and inflammatory diseases. They might also suffer from skin conditions like hives or rash. Vata people are very susceptible to gas, lower back pain, arthritis, sciatica, paralysis, ADHD, nervousness, anxiety, Parkinson's. And these are just a few examples of what is a very sophisticated process of diagnosis. Remember that specific diseases and symptoms are determined by which dosha is imbalanced and then what tissue that aggravated dosha settles in. And we'll learn more about that as we move on in our lecture series. But for now, I hope you've enjoyed this introduction. Moving forward in the next 3 modules, we're going to go dosha by dosha to discover more about the disease process for each dosha, dosha-specific attributes, which I find very exciting, dosha-specific diseases and symptoms, and then lifestyle practices and remedies for keeping your dominant dosha or doshas balanced and happy. Since we'll be moving into the warmer months by then, we'll probably be starting with pitta. At the time of this publishing, I'm going to leave the comments on, but I don't imagine that I'll be good at coming back to check or respond to them. So if you have any specific questions, or if you want to book a live version of this individual lecture or this lecture series, please reach out via email. It's hello@driftwoodwellnessstudio.com. I actually cut a decent amount of material from this module just to make it a little more approachable. So if you want to really nerd out and learn more, or just to have a conversation, please reach out. I love conducting this lecture in person, and we'll travel within reason, but I'm also happy to offer it virtually in real time for small groups. Otherwise, you can find us on social media. We're at Driftwood Wellness Studio on Instagram and Facebook. And then our website is driftwoodwellnessstudio.com, and our Etsy store is Shop Driftwood Studio. Otherwise, I hope you enjoyed this installment, and we'll tune back in for the other 3 modules. Take care.